What's up, everybody? Welcome back to this week's episode of Between the 20s. We are back after a bit of a break, following up our last week's quarterbacks episode. Our top 10 quarterbacks came out recently, and now we're bringing you top 10 running backs for fantasy football this season in 2021. Represent this little series represents the start of our fantasy football coverage for the year, so we're pretty excited. Mike, how do you feel?
I am very excited. And I just want to remind everybody, I did in the quarterback video, but just get at the top of everybody's head that last year, the three of us were in a league, and I finished higher than both of the gentlemen also on this call. Just remember that when you think of whose fantasy advice are you going to take around the fence.
Even Leicester City won the Premier League once, Mike. Just keep that in mind as well. Bryce, how do you feel about running backs this year? What do you got?
I think this is a deep year at running back. It hasn't been this deep in a long time. I have some exciting people that I'm trying to target as high ceiling running back twos. It could be a fun year to draft running backs and draft running backs early.
All right, with that, let's kick it off with a man that needs no introduction. Our consensus, unanimous number one running back, Christian McCaffrey, for the Carolina Panthers. This guy's unbelievable. Everyone knows 2 years ago, he was unreal, historic season. Last year, cut short by injury, unfortunately. But even when he was on the field, this guy was unbelievable. So based on that, he's number one for all of us. Anything to say about Christian McCaffrey, guys?
Just that in full PPR formats, to back up what you're saying, one of my favorite stats, Christian McCaffrey has not scored fewer than 22 points in the last 2 years in any game he's played. So if you're afraid of injuries, don't be.
Unbelievable.
This guy is unbelievable.
All right, with that, we're moving on to our number two, which is almost consensus. Mike, as usual, is messing up our list a little bit. We got Dalvin Cook at number two. Me and Bryce, or Bryce and I both have Dalvin Cook at number two. Mike has him down at number four. What do you have to say for yourself, Mike?
Yes, I have Dalvin Cook at number four. As the resident contrarian, of course, I always love to be in this position. But my thought process here is last year for me, and everybody out there, just remember, I drafted Dalvin Cook last year, and people called me out.
Where's the gratitude?
People called me out. They said, how can you take Dalvin Cook ahead of, I think it was Zeke, right?
I don't recall.
I think so.
How can you take Dalvin Cook ahead of Zeke? And what I do, I took Dalvin Cook ahead of Zeke, and I believe better team. So let's just let me. Can I fact check that? I'm pretty sure that's true.
Yeah, right. You're right. Zeke was, or Dalvin Cook was, I think, running back 2 last year.
So. Right. Running back 3.
Or 3.
But this is standard. But half PPR that we look at, Dalvin Cook was he's 3. So Dalvin Cook's the year last year, I think, is kind of his best performance that he's going to put forward. I feel like everything kind of broke right. The Vikings were very run heavy. I do think it's repeatable, but I also think that Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry can have better seasons and will have better seasons, just because I think everything sort of broke right for Dalvin Cook last year, and I'm sort of expecting a little bit more positive regression from Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry coming into this next season. Alvin Kamara, especially because we're going to have a little bit of a quarterback question there. I mean, not really a question, but just a question in terms of performance. In that Drew Brees is now gone. Can Teddy Bridgewater, right?
Nope.
not Teddy Bridgewater.
Either
Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston.
Jameis Winston.
Who's that?
Teddy's long gone because he used to play. He was on
Teddy's in Denver
a couple of years ago. Teddy used to back him up 2 years ago, and then he
went to Carolina.
And got a free agent in Carolina.
Okay. Well, and then Jameis Winston moved to Tampa Bay to I got a little thrown off there, but anyway, Jameis Winston will be Jameis Winston / Taysom Hill becoming a quarterback. I feel like with that they're going to rely much more on their run offense and their short passing game. I feel like they're going to be targeting Alvin Kamara on those short passes. So that's kind of why I'm putting him at number 2. And number 3, I feel like, Derrick Henry is just going to do what he does. The offense there in Tennessee is built around Derrick Henry. You have a lot of other weapons in Minnesota that if people start kind of plugging up the run game, I mean, you do in Tennessee, but Tennessee's really built around Dalvin Cook, around Derrick Henry, Whereas in Minnesota, you have a lot of other weapons, and they have shown the ability to kind of be able to go to other assets in the middle of the game if the running game is stopped. In Tennessee, that is much less likely for me. It seems that either Dalvin Cook or Derrick Henry performs very well, or the Titans really lose. It's kind of they live or die by the And I know they have Julio Jones now, but I do not think that kind of the value add there will take that much away from I was going to say Teddy Bridgewater, all over the place from
Derrick Henry. Yeah, so Mike previewed our next two consensus rankings, which are Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry back-to-back. Bryce and I don't agree, actually. Bryce has snuck Saquon Barkley into the 4 spot, which is higher than where Mike and I have him ranked. But I want to give Bryce a chance to talk about either Kamara or Henry before we move on to this next tier.
Yeah, so Mike, everything you said about Derrick Henry is completely right. He's just as reliable as it gets. They use him more in the passing game, which is only likely to continue that trend, in my opinion, anyway. He's an exciting player. Alvin Kamara scares the living daylights out of me. You said they're going to use the short passing game more. I could not disagree more. We saw what happened when Taysom Hill came in when Drew Brees was out. Alvin Kamara didn't break 10 full PPR points. It is terrifying. Now, not terrifying enough to keep him out of my own personal top 3. I still think he's an absolute stud. I think that Sean Payton, regardless of quarterback, is going to get him involved. And it was more just trying to figure things out when Drew Brees went down last year. More time to game plan. Kamara's still going to be an absolute force, but he scares me so much because we don't know what's going to happen to the quarterback position, particularly with Jameis Winston, who just likes to bomb.
Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah.
Or Teddy. I'd be very, very surprised if
Teddy
he
ends up
well
as
with Teddy
starting,
Bridgewater.
Yeah.
But look, Alvin Kamara, I had him ranked 3, Barkley 4, and Henry 5. So I clearly believe in Kamara. He led me to through some leagues last year. It's just you're taking a risk. It's about as risky as you can get inside the top 5, outside of Saquon with the injury history.
Yeah, Kamara's. I'm closer to Bryce on this one, as our rankings reflect, but a lot of question marks. And at that point in your draft, you can really lose your draft early on. You don't lose your league in the first round, but you can certainly, or you don't win your league in the first round, you can certainly lose your league in the first round. And I think it's a big risk, but I mean, I have him at 3. If he's at 3 and I'm on the clock, I'm going to take him. Yeah, so let's move on to Saquon Barkley. Big question marks again, backing up one question mark in Alvin Kamara with another in Saquon Barkley. We have him at our consensus number 5. Bryce talked about it a little bit, but why do you have him at 4, whereas Mike and I have him at 5 and 6, respectively?
Yeah, he's just an elite talent. He's probably the best pure running back overall in the NFL. Maybe Alvin Kamara in terms of actual talent. The Giants added weapons. They added Kenny Galladay. It's only going to help to open up space for Saquon Barkley to work a little bit more, provided Kenny Galladay's on the field. We all know Kenny Galladay's well-documented injury history in Detroit as well. It's a big year for Daniel Jones. It's a proven year for Daniel Jones. He might use Saquon as more of a safety blanket. I certainly hope he does. If the ball's out of his hands, he won't fumble as much. But my biggest thing is the line. Another year to gel on the line. Andrew Thomas coming into his second year. He does play the tackle position, which obviously is more important for the passing game, but it still impacts the run, especially more of a stretch zone run that the Giants run. Even with the ACL, it's still coming off rest, no matter how you look at it, which for a running back happened to Dalvin Cook last year. Dalvin Cook came off an ACL and was absolutely explosive, or rather 2 years ago. I think Saquon Barkley can be the next running back to do that. Guys like Adrian Peterson done it before. Saquon Barkley is that kind of talent with a much better receiving ability than a guy like Adrian Peterson had. For me, the ceiling is sky high, provided he can actually make it past the line of scrimmage this year.
So, Mike, why are you hating on your New York Giant running back? What's up?
I'm not hating on him. I just have Ezekiel Elliott in front of him, and I think that's justifiable because Ezekiel Elliott had a very poor year last year due to the fact that Dak Prescott was gone. And Saquon Barkley it's a bit of a risk for me just because that Giants offense is just very questionable. I don't really trust. I know they brought in Kenny Galladay. I don't trust the offensive line that much. I do think they had a better season than most recent Giants offensive line seasons last year. But you have Daniel Jones, the quarterback, who's still in this phase where he's trying to prove whether he belongs in the league. Not belongs in the league full time, but could be really valuable in the league full time and Giants franchise quarterback. And I just think I would rather go with Zeke and Dak as kind of the duo that is proven and has been able to do this in the past, as opposed to Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, with Saquon's injury history and Daniel Jones being a quarterback that everybody isn't necessarily totally in on. And also, people say that Dak had that injury last year. How can we trust him? I think all you have to see for that is look at the deal the Cowboys gave over the offseason. I don't think they would give that deal to him if they had any doubt in their mind that Dak Prescott would come back and be at least the player he was before the injury.
Well, Cowboys are not known for fiscal responsibility, let's just say. But I do understand your point, and I do agree. We transition with that into Ezekiel Elliott, who I think is one of the safest guys in this draft, as he always is. You just trust the offense. Last year, they were unbelievable when Dak was there. And since Dak is coming back, we expect similar things. Ezekiel Elliott was the top 4, I think, running back with Dak last year. And I think I'm not sure we'll see top 4 numbers, but he'll definitely be a lock and loaded running back 1. I think, as I mentioned, one of the safest guys in the draft. And I think he's a great kind of rock at the center of any team. So I'm liking Ezekiel Elliott. Maybe I'm talking him up because I'm trying to speak into existence because I have him on one of my fantasy teams as a keeper, but who knows? I think what I'm saying makes sense.
And just going back to the fiscal responsibility of the Cowboys, you have to remember, maybe we should bring it into question because every year they donate Ezekiel Elliott into the Salvation Army box.
The Salvation Army box, yeah.
Thanksgiving. So very good point.
I think the Salvation Army might be more appreciative of the money that Jerry Jones used to buy that super yacht he was drafting from, but who's counting? Next up, we have Nick Chubb of the Browns. We're all pretty close. Mike and I both have him at 7. Bryce has him at 8. So, Bryce, why are you the contrarian? Why are you picking up the Mike role here?
My opinion on Nick Chubb is probably the same as you guys. I think he's unbelievable. We saw what he did when he came back last year. It was absurd. The guy was as efficient as it gets. Kareem Hunt doesn't scare me at all. They make it work because they're both on the field at the same time all the time. The reason I have him lower is because of the next guy on the list, and Aaron Jones. And I think Aaron Jones is primed for an absolutely massive season, especially with Jamal Williams out. Again, somewhat predicated on Aaron Rodgers playing. If Jordan Love is the quarterback and if you stack the box more, there are question marks. But if Aaron Rodgers does play, Aaron Jones could have a huge year. And that's the only reason I have Nick Chubb a little bit lower is because I'm willing to risk it for Aaron Jones. But I mean, Nick Chubb, you want to talk about rock solid. I think he is safer than Ezekiel Elliott. Actually, he's just, the guy doesn't go less than 100 yards. It's just case in point. He's unbelievable. But the only reason I'm a little bit lower is because I'm going to take the flyer on Aaron Jones.
Yeah, Nick Chubb certainly is probably one of the 2 best pure runners in the NFL now. A lot of people point to his pass catching ability or lack thereof and lack of involvement in the passing game, which is probably why he's not in that upper tier. And because the Browns, of course, they have weapons on the outside and they use Kareem Hunt in that role mostly. But Kevin Stefanski has really unlocked a new kind of element of this team where both running backs have significant fantasy value. Especially as we said, Nick Chubb. I love Nick Chubb this year again. As Bryce said, safe as safe can get, which is, as I mentioned, what you're looking for early on in drafts. Do you have anything to add, Mike?
I think you guys really summed everything up quite well there.
Sounds good. So let's talk about this guy, Aaron Jones. He's up next at rank 8 for us. Bryce mentioned it a little bit, his volatility. But Mike, what do you have to say about Aaron Jones?
I'm afraid of Aaron Jones coming into this season. We have a lot of questions up there today, including whether Aaron Rodgers will be at quarterback. And I think if Aaron Rodgers isn't, there is an argument to be made that the running game will be used more, but my counter to that will be the running game will be basically all they have. And an inexperienced Jordan Love coming in, there's definitely going to be some rough patches if that's the case. And the offense isn't going to work as efficiently as it was with as it would with Aaron Rodgers. So that is a big question there. And kind of, just even including Aaron Rodgers, I believe that Nick Chubb is kind of the main cog in a Browns offense that is improving and getting better. They're a rush-first offense, even with Jarvis Landry and Odell on the wings. But their rush-first offense is centered around Nick Chubb, which is why I put him ahead of Aaron Jones, where Aaron Jones, the way I feel is that Aaron Jones sort of is the beneficiary of a very solid offense created by Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I am definitely the lowest on Aaron Jones this year. Certainly, I have him outside my top 12 even at this moment. And that's just because of Aaron Rodgers. Without Aaron Rodgers, I don't think the Packers are a very good team. I don't think they're going to be a good offense. And Aaron Jones is all about touchdowns. He just scores so many touchdowns, and that's kind of what pushes him and blasts him up into where he's been in the fantasy rankings for the past couple of years. And so without those consistent scoring opportunities, I don't see Aaron Jones being as impactful as some of these other guys that we've mentioned and some of these other guys that we're going to talk about later. But that's with the caveat. If I get a call right now and it's Aaron Rodgers on the phone and he tells me, hey, I'm going to play for the Green Bay Packers this year, Aaron Jones moves up into probably my top 5. He'll slide right in with Zeke and Saquon somewhere in there. And I won't look back because, as Bryce mentioned, no Jamal Williams. And with Aaron Rodgers back, the Packers are going to pick up right where they left off last year. And they're going to be even hungrier after losing in the NFC Championship game for the past 2 years. So, like I said, this is really questionable. This is what happens when you make a rankings list 2 months out from the NFL season. But no one really knows right now, and that's kind of why I have him ranked so low. But I don't blame you guys for putting him higher. The uncertainty is tough to swallow in the first round, which is where he's going now. So that's why I have him a little bit lower. And so moving on, another guy, a young guy that burst onto the scene last year. A lot of people predicted this. Next up in our rankings, Jonathan Taylor. Bryce actually has him the lowest, which surprises me because Bryce really
had him last year.
Really talked him up last year. So what's different this year, Bryce?
I just want to get this out of the way first. I absolutely love Jonathan Taylor. I love him as a football player, as a runner, as a fantasy asset. I took him in the 4th round last year as a rookie. I was willing to bet on him. Jonathan Taylor. Well, not by the end of the year. But Jonathan Taylor was really propped up at the end of the year by a couple of just superb games to finish off the season. And that, I think, left everyone with a little bit of recency bias. He went through a rough stretch in the middle of the season. Very rough. He was used to carry the ball 2, 3, 4 times a game. Nyheim Hines is still there. And something that I think we forget is Marlon Mack is coming back. He's healthy. Frank Reich likes him. He'll be used. He's going to take carries. How many? I'm not sure because Jonathan Taylor is a superior running back. He just is. He's using the passing game a little bit more. I like Jonathan Taylor a lot. Marlon Mack is going to eat some of his carries. Nyheim Hines is going to eat some of his carries. Nyheim Hines is going to eat some of the passing game. There's too many mouths to feed for me to feel comfortable taking him over guys like Jones or Chubb. But look, he's an exceptional football player. I love Jonathan Taylor. If I get Jonathan Taylor as my running back 1, I'm happy with it. If I take him at the end of the first round, beginning of the second. But he's not a guy that I think has tremendous upside from a purely fantasy perspective, just because he's going to be capped in terms of what he can do.
Who do you see as leading that offense there?
It's going to be Jonathan Taylor. It's absolutely going to be Jonathan Taylor. He's the head of that backfield, no question. But you still have Marlon Mack. You still have Nyheim Hines. And let's not forget, we are coming with a new quarterback with Carson Wentz. Doesn't impact the running game as much as it might impact guys like T.Y. Hilton, Michael Pittman, if they're even fantasy relevant again, Paris Campbell. But you still have a new guy under center, which always impacts certain things. And we did see that while Carson Wentz was the quarterback in Philly with Frank Reich as his offensive coordinator, they didn't run the ball all that much. All they did was just pound it with Carson Wentz, go right up the middle of Zach Ertz and down line to Alshon Jeffrey, which could happen again with Michael Pittman, and it could happen again with T.Y. Hilton, just assuming those roles.
Yeah, this Colts offense is certainly going to look different than it did last year with check down king Phil Rivers at the helm last year.
But I mean, gentlemen, we have an offense with a questionable quarterback, but experienced quarterback. He's an experienced quarterback in a new system with a remarkably strong offensive line and two wide receivers that I feel. I mean, I'm still. So my last recollection of T.Y. Hilton's relevance was waiting to hear about Andrew Luck's injury to see if he would start in my season in like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. I don't see anyone else in this offense other than the running backs that Bryce mentioned playing an important role. And with that, I just see a potential bell cow situation. We could be looking at the next coming of the Tennessee Titans here in Indianapolis. I don't think Bryce is giving that enough credit in his thoughts.
I'm just not sure. Mike, you mentioned that it's a new system, it's a new everything. But the thing is, it's also kind of not. It's the same system Frank Reich ran in Philadelphia. Carson Wentz ran that system for multiple years. If you want to talk about moving into a new system that's familiar, that's what this is. It's not like Justin Fields is coming in Chicago where he's learning the playbook for the first time in the NFL for the first time, or even experienced quarterbacks, say Sam Darnold, right, going to Carolina, learns a whole new playbook, learns a whole new team. Frank Reich and Carson Wentz worked. That pairing had Carson Wentz as a front-running MVP candidate. He is a different player now. I'm not trying to say Carson Wentz is going to be an MVP again. I don't think so. But you cannot discount the history between the head coach and the quarterback, especially when they went out and traded for this guy. Chris Ballard went out and said, I want you. I don't want to risk what's happening in the draft. I want this guy. This guy works with my coach before. I think there's a connection there, and that's what scares me a little bit, is that you have the Frank Reich, Carson Wentz connection. And you're absolutely right. Jonathan Taylor is the best running back in the backfield. He leads the backfield. He is, for all intents and purposes, the bell cow, if there can be a bell cow. You're still looking at 3 viable running backs in the backfield.
Yeah, the Colts are a very interesting team this year, both in NFL and fantasy. So we'll just have to find out. This is really a prove-it year for Carson Wentz, even though I feel like we've been saying that for a couple of years now, and he has not proven it yet. And finishing up our top 10, rounding it all out, we have Austin Ekeler at number 10. Looks like Bryce and I both have him at 9. Big Mike has him at 10. So, Mike, why so low on this guy? I'm just kidding.
Why so low? He's one below. Honestly, Austin Ekeler, I put in this spot because I look at all the other running backs and just say, Austin Ekeler, I feel is better than these other gentlemen and below
so it's just like
everybody
a feel,
else.
Like
it's a feel. But Bryce knows so much more about Austin Ekeler because he's dealt with the ups and downs of Mr. Ekeler for what it feels to me like years, but I think it was just last year, potentially the year before. So I will let him handle the Austin Ekeler. The Austin Ekeler content.
Take it away.
So, Mike, you said ups and downs. Being an Austin Ekeler owner, there are very few downs. There really are. He is such a high floor.
Bryce, there are at least 8.
8 guys in front of him.
You know what? Fair enough. But he doesn't have that same assurance, right? That's the question. You've got Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, you have an absolute assurance in what you're getting. Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, these guys are home run hitters. Austin Ekeler defines the term home run hitter, right? He's a lot like Aaron Jones. The problem with Austin Ekeler is that with Phillip Rivers, the guy might be a top 5 running back, right? Check down king, like Amir said. Justin Herbert is 24, fresh arm. The guy's going to air it out to Keenan Allen, air it out to Mike Williams. Lost Hunter Henry, so that does open up stuff for Austin Ekeler. So a little known kind of correlation for Mr. Stathead Michael Vetter. running back and tight end targets are correlated. Running back and receiver targets are not. So losing your tight end does
Are they
mean
not
something
correlated
when
or
it comes to
negatively
running.
correlated?
Oh,
For those
I believe it's a zero
specific
correlation.
Okay.
I believe it's zero.
Just want to make
But
sure
if
we
you're
are
looking
being
at,
exact for our audience out there.
thank you for keeping me in check with the statistics. Austin Ekeler to me is, if you're willing to take the bet that he's going to get double-digit targets and have 8 to 10 catches in the game, it doesn't matter what he does. If you're playing in any kind of PPR format, that is invaluable. The rushing floor is low, right? He'll pull off a couple unreal ones and he'll run for 150, 200 yards in the game, but he's much more likely to be 7 for 70 in the air and then 7 carries for 40 yards on the ground. And can he score a touchdown? But it's going to be, can you grab him in those huge weeks? If we're playing full PPR, I'd probably slide him ahead of Jonathan Taylor, just because you know that he has so much upside through the air. The question is honestly Justin Herbert. Is Justin Herbert going to use him? We saw last year that he did, but as Justin Herbert becomes more familiar with the offense, we know Justin Herbert now has Rashawn Slater at left tackle. That's going to open things up, allow him to throw downfield. It'll be interesting. That's why he's probably at the low end of the top 10 or at 10 as opposed to 8 or 9, because there are a few question marks with the offense. But you want to talk about a guy that could just win you a week, he could pull off 12 catches for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. That just doesn't happen at running back position.
Yeah, I think the reason we're higher on him this year than we were last year going into the draft in turn for Austin Ekeler is just we're projecting a jump for Justin Herbert. As you guys saw on our quarterbacks list, we all had him as a top 8 quarterback for fantasy. And from what this guy showed last year, we think he can definitely support Austin Ekeler too. We have him projected at top 10. So we're looking at a projected top 10 for Austin Ekeler. And that a lot of that is, as I said, based off of the Justin Herbert factor. So anything to add on Austin Ekeler, guys, or any of these guys in the top 10? Because that wraps this list up. Those are our 10. Some guys that just missed the cut. We have Joe Mixon, Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire are really the main ones. Mike and Bryce have Josh Jacobs right there as well. I think he's a little bit lower for me. But those are some guys that we think are going to be solid running back twos, but not quite good enough to make this video, make this top 10. So with that, if you guys don't have anything to add, if there's no Ryan Tannehill discussion we want to have for the running backs, that'll do it for today's episode of Between the 20s. We will see you next time on our wide receivers episode. So keep an eye out for that in your subscription box. See you then.